Hey everyone, another FV304 game here. This one's not particularly spectacular, but since the FV304 was affected by the 9.3 changes, I'd like to talk for a little while about what exactly was done to it and how it's affected the way it plays. In short, Wargaming did actually take notice of how hideously overpowered this thing is. It was inevitable. Even bad players were doing well in it. And they set about trying to address this with a series of nerfs. Of course, in true Wargaming style, they attacked a bunch of things which don't actually nerf it. So, the changes that I can remember off the top of my head, it's got very slightly reduced accuracy, it's got slightly worsened reload time and therefore DPM, and I know they changed the track traverse rate. I think they may have changed the ground resistance, but I can't recall offhand. Either way, what it means is the 304 fires slightly slower with slightly less accuracy. Note my use of the word slightly, it's probably an understatement. There's not really a whole lot of difference. The difference in rate of fire is the most noticeable out of the two. In addition to that, it turns a little more slowly on its tracks, so if you do get caught out, you're going to have a harder time turning to run away. Similarly, you won't have as easy of a time, well, correction, you will have a harder time jousting with light tanks, particularly ELCs. Before it was already kind of difficult because even though you were as fast as them, they traversed much better. Now it's actually quite hard. Now, notice I did say they nerfed the FV304's accuracy. They have not nerfed it much. The aim circle is still smaller than basically any given tank, even at the edge of your range. And when I said at the start that they nerfed things which don't really have much effect on the 304, range is the big one. A lot of people tend to look at arty range as being very much a traditional longer is better type thing. It's not. The way arty mechanics work in this game, the shorter your range, the higher your arc, and the higher your arc, the better you can drop shells on top of people behind cover. Because the 304 has such a short range and such a high arc, the two of them combine to let you shoot over shit that no arty should be able to really hit things over. If you know what you're doing in the 304, you know where the edge of your range is. Just slightly outside of the pink circle on my XVM map. I'm not sure what the pink circle is meant to be. I know the yellow one is spotting, max spotting range, I think, and the blue one is my own spotting range. Of course, the FV304 is blind as a bat. Now, if you position enemy tanks right near the edge of your range, somewhere between the halfway between the blue and yellow rings and the pink ring, somewhere around there, you're going to be dropping shells about 45 degrees onto them. And when you're dropping shells in at 45 degrees, you can get over most cover. You'll be penning engine decks, you'll be hitting people in the sides of their turrets or in the top of their turret. Good shit all round. And in the 304, because your gun won't handle armor very well, you really need to be trying to arc those shells in. As I said, this wasn't a really big game. I was taking a lot of bad shots. Still getting a little used to how to position arty on this map. I don't play arty often. When I do, I usually get different maps. South Coast is one I've never quite learned to adapt to. Thankfully, the enemy team were obligingly suiciding into the rest of our tanks, and so it did end up being a win. I'm not sure if I have post-games for this one. I probably do. If I do, they will be posted in the video description. You'll be able to see exactly what I did yourself. They may have touched the aim time, but I don't think so. I think that was just me getting greedy and trying to snapshot. The ammunition count hasn't changed. You still carry 64 shells of HE only. There's no other shell types. They haven't changed, so far as I can recall, the gun arc or traverse or anything like that. I'm pretty sure it's just the reload time, the accuracy, the hull traverse, and maybe the soft ground, or the ground resistance in general, I suppose. My 304 videos are getting a little rare. It's mostly because I've been playing normal tanks more than arty recently. I will not be selling my 304 in light of these changes. I will be keeping it, I will still be playing it, I will still be making puppies cry in it. At the end of the day, the reload has been lengthened, but it's still just short enough that puppies without repair skill or repair kits will be permatracked by it. Even if they are not, if you run a platoon with 2 304s, they won't be able to get away from it. FV304 platoons are still as overpowered as they ever were, particularly if you bring along another arty, a bigger arty, or if you have something that can exploit their ability to permatrack something, say a light tank or a medium. More traditionally mediums, I suppose. There aren't that many light tank drivers willing to get in on a heavy these days. As you can see, it still doesn't deal well with thick armor. However, it does very much like hitting the roof and engine deck of things, and quite regularly, if you can get shots onto the engine deck, you will be able to knock 400, 500 hit points off of something. The big question, would my monster carry I managed to pull off with Ethan have been possible with these nerfs? Maybe. The reload time nerf is the biggest problem for it. The accuracy, as you can probably tell if you compare this to my earlier videos in the 304, has barely changed. It's so insignificant, the change I made to it, that it really doesn't matter. But the reload time is a bit of a problem. Obviously it's not going to change the tank's playstyle anytime soon, but it can mean that targets will get away from you if they have repair skill trained. It can also mean that you won't be able to, put in a shot to rescue an ally in time. But with all that said, it's still not a bad reload. It's still quite fast by arty standards. And as I said before, if they don't have repair skill, they're probably still going to be permatracked by particularly larger tanks which have longer track repair times. I can't recall exactly what it is that affects track repair times. I think maybe it might have something to do with track hit points, but I could be wrong. All I know is that the T-54 still has Jesus tracks that repair almost instantly. Other tanks, the track repairs can take forever, even with full track repair skill. Full repair skill. Like I said, some tanks will get away. This T-150 managed to repair his track before I had my next shot up. Thankfully he was still lit, and I got another direct hit into him there. I thought I might have tracked him again, but I actually didn't. As you can see, he just knocked that tree to the right side of my screen, so he kept going. It was getting a little dicey here, but the rest of my team were mostly bunched up together. Often it's a bad thing when puppies get that close to each other, but in this case, late game, fighting two tanks, it's good to have numbers. If you go in one at a time, it's just going to feed kills to the last enemy tank. And indeed, I have seen a team feed a Pools medal to a one-shottable E50 just because they went in to fight him one at a time. I was absolutely furious, as you could probably imagine. And I think I quit after that for the day. T-150 gets tracked. I'm driving here to try and get range on him. He's just outside my range, as you can probably see. Looking for slightly flatter ground so my gun's not canted off to one side. Slopes do affect your point of impact as artillery. I'm assuming at least some of you would know that, but just for those who don't, if you're parked on a slope either sideways or vertically, you are going to have issues with where your shots go, and it becomes more extreme with range. Also, parking uphill or downhill on slopes can affect your gun's range. So it may not always match the range ring on XVM. I think that's what the pink one is. As you could see earlier in the game, I was actually getting shots on stuff just outside of it because I was parked slightly on a hill. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you have a 304 and have been worrying about whether it's going to be worth playing or not, I wouldn't. It's still perfectly fine. It's still a lot of fun to play. It hasn't really changed much. It's just slightly less overpowered than it used to be. It's still a pretty strong arty. Best of luck in your matches. Best of luck in general. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for stopping by.